Okay. No, wait. Okay. So, last thing is creating a schedule and an accountability system for you to keep track of how much you're working. So, when you maybe aren't getting the grade that you wanted, you can look back and be like, well, does this make sense? Or even preemptively and proactively, you can give yourself a score each week and see, okay, am I doing the things that I need to be doing to achieve my goal? And it's just an honesty system, basically. And it will make a huge difference just having to check it off. So, now, depending on your goals and where you are right now, like if you're a really big studier or if you aren't a huge studier and you're just looking to improve a little bit, it will depend what you're going to set for you. So I really want you to set something realistic to your goals. For instance, if you're aiming for a 7, I would suggest this stuff at a minimum, but I would also suggest doing extra things like recommended readings, maybe a study group where you get together with like-minded students and discuss those additional readings, or do other things together like that. For a bare minimum, here is what I would recommend for you, anyone to be satisfied with themselves or their grade. Okay, so the first thing, I'll just do tutorial exercise first because it's quite simple. There's nothing you really need to do about tutorial exercise on a weekly basis. It's just what I would recommend is come to the tutorial and do the task, and I will go through what is required of you and what will give you the mark you want, aka 100% of the marks. Everybody should aim for 100% on this tutorial exercise. 15% is an absolute steal. You don't want to lose marks here. So the first thing I would say is, especially if you're in my class, I would aim to have a draft, like the drafted assignment before you leave the tutorial. Draft complete before leaving. So I will actually carve out time for you to complete this in the tutorial in a guided way. So rather than just telling you what's needed here, like in each section, I'll tell you what's needed and give you opportunity to write that section in the tutorial. So there really isn't any excuse to be leaving the tutorial without a very rough draft, at least, of that. And then here you'll want to schedule it. So probably you only really need maybe an hour, potentially, especially if you've already got the draft, but you'll need to fine tune and edit for your submission, and that should take an hour, perhaps. So wherever your schedule or whatever your schedule is for the week, please make sure that you know when it is. Like, so if your tutorial is on Wednesday, perhaps even straight after the tutorial, you can do it. Just the hour. You maybe have lunch or breakfast or whatever it is, depending on which Wednesday tutorial you're in. An hour afterwards, done, submit it. You can email it to me straight away and you don't have to worry about it. Please try not to do things on the weekend. Weekends are for rest. Second of all, okay, let's have a look at weekly quiz. Now, I know it's called a quiz, but it's your exam. It's the exam that we have to put onto online because of COVID. So don't let the word quiz fool you into thinking it's easy. It's not any easier than any final exam. And in fact, sort of faculty or the school has told us that because it's an online exam, we have to account for that, and so technically it might be even more difficult than the other exam. Give me 1 second. Okay, sorry about that. So the first thing you want to do for the weekly quiz is watch the lecture. Before you watch the lecture, I want you to create questions for lecture viewing. I don't know what that's doing there. And how do you create those questions, you ask? Okay, I have no idea what it's doing there. You will go to your lectures, learning objectives. So when any course coordinator or lecturer is writing assessment, what they should be doing, or what they are doing, is looking at the learning objectives and creating assessment based on these objectives, because we're trying to teach you this information to measure whether or not we've effectively taught it. We need to create questions based on the objectives. So can the students outline information processing approach to cognition? Can they distinguish learning from other related phenomena? So just before you go into the lecture, write down these points in a question form. So what are the basic historical stages and key contributions of each stage or person or something? And then this one might be draw an outline of the information process, theory, something. Make a question out of it. Have that question there before you enter into watching the lecture. This is going to prime your brain to pick out the important information and organize it in a way that's going to be useful for you and easier to retrieve later. It's a really important stage. It also should help you be a little bit more engaged in the lecture as well, because lectures can get a little bit monotonous when they're, well, we've all been there. So use those as questions before you go into it. The next thing you want to do is immediately after lecture, or ASAP, do your best to blindly answer those questions from memory. So on a new page, once you've watched the lecture and you've got all your notes there, without referring to your notes, go to the next page, try to answer the question. You don't have to spend a lot of time on it, 5-10 minutes per question, so that would be like 20-minute review. Something is better than nothing. If you don't feel like doing it at all, do 1 minute, or whatever you can bear. Do 30 seconds, but do something, because that process of trying to retrieve it is really, really important. And doing it straight after your lecture is the time where you're going to be able to retrieve the most information, because as soon as you walk away from that lecture, you just get decay of ability to retrieve it, and it just goes in and then it leaves, because your brain thinks that's not important. The less you use it, the less it remembers it. And the next one you'd want to do is, so there's actually a really important study strategy, which is called spaced retrieval. So that retrieval practice that I talked about on the previous learning activity, you want to do that almost again, but spaced as in at a later date. And I will build this into the tutorials. So we'll have a little tutorial showdown, and I'll tell you more about that in the tutorial. But for now, you might want to prepare for that showdown. So the learning strategy or learning activity I would set you is to, just want to change my layout here, give me 1 second, is to, review learning objectives and previous lecture in preparation for a tutorial showdown. Now this means when we do the retrieval practice in the tutorial, you're going to be able to retrieve more of it. And this is really going to set you up. If you've never used any of these study tactics strategies before, then, oh my gosh, I really want you to do it, because studying for an exam or a quiz after you've been doing this as the information comes along is actually life-changing. I'm not blowing it out of proportion, I swear. So please try at least these ones, and then, like I said, if you're aiming for a 7th, or you're someone who wants to get first class honours, PhD scholarship, you want to do clinical masters, and you really need to be getting that really quite high GPA, at least for the fast track, maybe adding in some extra things. So what else could you do weekly for the quiz? Like, do you want to have a study group where you talk about the lecture together, have a discussion, have an argument, things like that? Do you want to quiz each other? Are you also going to read the recommended readings? Is that going to be another learning strategy? You can do as many of these as you like and just tick them off. The self-monitoring report. Now, it is going to be hard to be specific here with the self-monitoring report. What I would start with is something general. I would start with maybe even something quite modest. So spending a certain amount of time on the assignment. So perhaps this is quite a big assignment as well. So we will be working on it as the semester goes along per week. And maybe that knots up each week. So starting at, I don't know, just even like 30 minutes. And then perhaps later, as it gets closer to the date, we bump it up to maybe like 1 hour. And then maybe down here, I actually don't know when the dates line up, but whatever you think is appropriate. I use the percentage that an assessment is worth as an indication of how much time to put into it. The only place that that's not true is tutorial exercise. I think you're getting a lot of bang for your buck there. You don't need to do much work to get those percentages. But a self-monitoring report, you want to be putting 40 hours into that to get your best work. It's very obvious when people have done this assignment last minute, you just kind of can't pull it together the way you can other assignments. So it's maybe spending a certain amount of time on the assignment per week, starting at 30 minutes. The other thing you're going to want to do is you will complete set exercise, complete exercise that Kirsty has set. So what I will do during the semester to keep you guys on track for the assignment is I will actually set an activity or where you should be with this assignment and do it before the next tutorial, starting next week, and then slowly I'll bulk it up. First thing will be something really simple. That's something that doesn't take you a lot of time, and then same with the next few weeks after that. And then as we get closer to the due date, then we're going to start really beefing it up. So I will provide quite a lot of guidance for this. So if you do follow these things, then I really guarantee you're going to be, over the moon with what you achieve, and perhaps maybe one of the better grades that you've got before. So put your trust in me, and hopefully we can get you whatever grade you'd like. Now this here is just the accountability part at the end. So maybe some things will be blacked out, like for the first week you actually won't need this. I don't know how to fill shading, so you won't actually have that in the first week, but did you do that? You can do this any way you want, but you could just do a yes. Did I do this? Yes. Did I do that? No. Did I do that? No. And did I do this? Yes. Okay, now what did you do? You got 3 yeses out of 5. So you go 3 out of 5 this week, and you give yourself a score of 3 out of 5 would be 60%. I'm terrible at mental arithmetic. 60%. And now you can kind of reflect on that and be like, okay, well, I did 60% of my learning objectives. Probably not setting myself up for failure. Next week, aim for 70% of them, and so on and so forth. That's really it, guys. Let me know if you have any questions. Okay, good luck.